Our guest for the next 1 hour is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and Tanganyika, Professor Patrick Loch Otieno Lumumba. PLO, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well.
Good to have you back here.
Thank you very much.
I said we have to find out why advocate of the High Court of Tanganyika. Why do you have to include it there? I thought it was like automatic when you're an advocate of a High Court of Kenya, then you can be admitted to the bars of Tanzania and Uganda. And
no, you've got to be specifically admitted to the bar of Tanganyika. Mm-hmm. Remember, Zanzibar has a different bar. So it's not automatic.
It's not automatic?
No, not at all.
So a Kenyan advocate cannot just go and practice?
Does not have right of audience in the courts of Tanganyika.
Okay.
Unless they are admitted as such.
Did you have to sit a bar exam in Tanganyika?
What happened at that time is that you had to have an interview with the Chief Justice. Mm-hmm. And the Chief Justice spent how many hours with me? 6 hours asking me questions about the laws of Tanzania and Tanganyika. And when he was satisfied that I knew the law, he recommended that I be admitted. Tanzania did not have bar examinations then. They have now introduced it like we do in Kenya.
That's interesting. So you actually did study the laws of Tanganyika and Tanzania.
Yeah. They've got to be satisfied that I'm fit to practice in Tanganyika.
Sasa interview ilikuwa kwa Kiswahili ama
kwa Kiingereza na Kiswahili?
So, swali la kwanza kaka Pendo.
Kwenye haya maudhui. Sheria kwa kipengee. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
City will welcome you with the day's proverb. And this week the proverbs are from the Gambia.
Yes, the Republic of the Gambia, not just Gambia. This proverb is actually interesting. If you stir up water in the pond, you will bring up the pond.
If you stir up water in the pond, you will bring up the pond. Prof, what's your interpretation?
You make the pond come alive. That is how I understand it. Because if it is not stirred, then it's dead. But you stir it and give it life.
Perfect.
Stirring up the water in the pond, you bring up the pond.
Yes.
Is that what you're doing with a letter to the president?
Exactly.
Okay. Give us now, first of all, the background. You have written a letter to President William Ruto. What about and why?
It is the civic duty of a patriotic citizen to be involved in the affairs of his or her nation. I observe our nation on a daily basis, and I'm worried. I'm worried that we are on the wrong path. And the buck stops with the President of the Republic of Kenya. And that is why I chose to write to him, to raise the critical issues. And remember, in that letter, I remind him that I did write to you on the first day of March. The year 2023, and on that occasion I wrote to both him and Mr. Raila Odinga when the country was in trouble. Of course, I've been vindicated. What I did suggest is what came about. The two gentlemen have entered into a rapprochement, and they are singing all the way to different places. But not for the benefit of the nation.
There you go.
Because things have gone south, in my view, and they continue to go south. And it is our duty to remind the president that you took an oath to serve your country. Your country is unhappy. That was the genesis.
Has it been received?
Oh, of course, the letter was received. I have a signed copy. It was delivered at his office in Arambe House.
Okay.
And it was received.
Do you expect a response from him?
I don't. My experience with African heads of state, except 3, they never respond. And I write to quite a number of them. The late John Joseph Pombe Magufuli used to respond to letters. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni responds to letters. Paul Kagame responds to letters, and I must also remember that Chakwera of Malawi does respond to letters. But Kenyan presidents, and I've written to all of them except Jomo Kenyatta, never respond to letters.
So even last year's letter was not responded to?
No, was not responded to.
Okay. In this letter, You tell the president a number of things, of course, reminding him about last year's letter and telling him what you felt then. And then you say it's common knowledge that the political rapprochement rode in the crest of protest by a segment of young Kenyans, Christ and Gen Z, in the month of July, during which they dramatized their dissatisfaction with the finance bill and the performance of your administration in several key areas. In response to their popular demands, you returned the finance bill to the National Assembly with all provisions deleted and dissolved your cabinet, which has now since been reconstituted in partnership with ODM. Your Excellency, your actions notwithstanding, and as I write, the National Intelligence Service will have informed you that there is a circulation of a lamentation about Kenya titled "Cry, My Beloved Country." And you quote that "Cry, My Beloved Country." What circulation is this, PLO?
You know, somebody sent me that particular poem, if you may, crying about the country. And if you read that poem, the individual is listing a number of concerns.
Yeah.
This is our country where governors and others are looting. This is our country where things are not happening in the right way. And you cannot fault all the issues that are raised there. And the gentleman is saying, but even when this is happening, there appears to be no positive response. It is business as usual on the part of the political class. Look, for example, at the finance bill. Without precedent, there has never been in the history of any country that I know where the president, upon receiving a bill, returns it with all provisions deleted without recommendation as to what ought to happen. We are now back again. The finance bill will be back with a bang. Cabinet reconstituted, and the individuals whom we thought would leave cabinet are back there. And in fact, when they are being vetted, they tell us how much they have raised or made in the last 2 years. Personal fortunes have increased, but the fortunes of the country have dwindled. These are concerns, and yet we are not angry as Kenyans. So that what the Gen Z did was to scare the political class for only a short while. And after they have entered into this alliance with the president, has entered into this alliance with Mr. Raila Odinga, he now feels that he has settled the political temperature, because by doing so, he has ethnicized the politics of the country. And in his mind, I think, neutered the movement of the young people. So you can do whatever you want. And this is not without precedent. We have seen it. We have seen it with the President Moi. We have seen it with the President Kibaki after 2008. We have seen it with President Uhuru Kenyatta, and now with President Ruto. If you remember, during the campaign, the president said, I will not allow myself to enter into any engagement with Raila Odinga.
Yeah. Bonapilo, there's something you've said, and I think it's interesting, that when you look at the unfolding of events, you've said that Kenyans are not angry. Kenyans are not angry, and that's why you don't see what any kind of action. The Gen Z protest did quite a thing in terms of putting a fork in the road in terms of where folks are going to go. But you've gone ahead to say that Kenyans are not angry. What would you see if Kenyans were?
If Kenyans were angry, Kenyans would sustain the protest. The middle class would sustain the protest in an organized manner. And we saw this in Sudan. When the middle class, the doctors, the lawyers, the business people, the engineers came to the street, until Omar al-Bashir left office. We saw this in Bangladesh, until Sheikh Hasina ran away and the entire cabinet ran away. We are not saying that they ran away or leave office. We are simply saying until they respond positively and do the things that are in the interest of the nation. But Kenyans very quickly become ethnic. I saw, for example, when a few individuals were appointed into cabinet from Nyanza, when you are in some of these forums which are ethnic, a number of the individuals from the Luo community are now saying, we now control the treasury. The money is now kept in Homa Bay. We are happy now. And you cannot run a nation on the basis of giving pride of place to primordial ethnic instincts. You soon divide the people. You hold homecoming parties and celebrate, and he who was the devil becomes the angel. And the anger is only as far as your political kingpin has not had his need satisfied. Once your political kingpin has been taken care of, then we all say, hallelujah, it is well with us. And that, I think, is one of the most unfortunate things in the Republic of Kenya. And if you hold a different opinion, like I tend to do, you can become the enemy.
Indeed.
You become the enemy.
But these same Kenyans, the people that you speak of, for whom, again, are sovereign, still have issues that are supposed to be taken care of, which to an extent are not. It's the same Kenyans that you say hold up the tribal position as sacrosanct, but still are suffering very many things. Education in the doldrums, healthcare. I mean, it's obvious what's happening with healthcare today. We have an infrastructure that could do with a good kick in the pants, if you know what I mean. But still, we hold this positioning or this ethnicity or this tribalism at a higher regard than livelihood. You know, my sister, there's something that we call the Stockholm Syndrome, where he or she who has been captured begins to love the captor. And this is the situation with Kenyans, that the politicians insult, abuse, and humiliate them on a daily basis. But somehow, they are quick to defend them. You've talked about the health sector now. See what is happening. But somebody is going to defend. I listened to the minister for the time being in charge of the health docket. She appears to be completely clueless. But yet, if you wanted to remove her from office today, her tribesmen and women will come and say, that is our daughter. I saw the case of the acting commissioner, IG, who literally disobeyed court orders. And people are saying, but he's from our tribe. And this happens, and I always remind myself this, that when a country is hurtling towards its destruction, then even when God himself reasons with their leaders and the people, they think God mad. They sacrifice at the altar of ethnicity to the detriment of the nation. So they are complicit in all these. But if people are angry and they want the right things done, then they will insist that the things be done. And I want once again to remind all of us of what happened in Bangladesh, which was after the Gen Z protests in Kenya. They were so dissatisfied with the Sheikh Hasina government, and they were disciplined. They went to her palace. She was airlifted to India. The ministers have all run away, and then they appointed somebody to be in a caretaker position because they were angry and they know what they want. Kenyans know what is wrong. But when it comes to tribe, somehow we give it a pride of place. And that is why the country continues to underachieve. That is why we are not running a democracy. We are running a kakistocracy, a government of our very worst. I listened to some of the lady talking about the impeachment of the Kericho governor. And I said, this is our leader. Can barely make sense and articulate an issue. And yet, those are the individuals whom we prefer because they have unexplained wealth, because they come from our tribe, because they come from our clan. The foundation is wrong.
PLO, the common thread in everything you've said appears to be not only an accommodation, but an acceptance of impunity.
Yes.
So that when we see it manifested in different ethnic groups, it is a commonality.
Yes.
Because everything we see, when you talk about a position of authority being given to someone in the form of a CS, what is it you're looking at? You're looking at power, and you're looking at what purportedly one could benefit. So it appears that the one thing we seem to have accepted as a nation is that wrong is not only tolerated, but it is accepted so long as it suits our own. And on that we seem to have agreed. Because it's the same issue every time you hear of a governor, either expecting, anticipating, or there's a threat of impeachment. There are always people who support that individual, there are always people who don't. And everything that is complained about has to do with how it is. They have a complete and total disregard for what we know as what is right, or as what is in the Constitution. And if I look at some of the rulings that our courts have had of late, it has been about constitutionality.
Yes.
Saying, all this is saying, this is not constitutional.
Yeah.
So if it isn't constitutional and people have been doing it, NGCDF, for instance, right now,
Yes.
it's not the first time. This thing has been in the courts, and the courts has pronounced itself several times. But again, there's a hue and cry about it. How on earth do we cure this disease that seems to have taken root? We seem to have determined as a nation that we will disregard what is right.
You know, City, you are so right that in this country, the truth depends on which tribal affiliation you are talking about, and that is relevant. And that is a tragic thing. If you look at even the whole fight against corruption, if you arrest anybody, they say he is a thief, we know, but he's our very own. And therefore, he's our thief, and therefore he or she ought not to be punished. And it's because the foundation is wrong. I always remember Wairimu Nyerere saying this very eloquently, say that when a nation is bankrupt of ideas, then they sacrifice at the altar of ethnicity or religion. In Kenya, it is ethnicity. And the question you are posing, how do we deal with it? History has demonstrated that if you have leadership at the top that walks the talk, it can be eliminated. I worked fairly closely with President John Joseph Pombe Magufuli, and within 1 year, he had injected discipline in governance. He had ensured that things were happening on the right way, in the right way. And it can be done when the tone from the top is clear, consistent, and is accompanied by action. But when the tone from the top is not clear, or one says with one side of the mouth what is right and does completely the wrong thing, then the people know that this is just but a joke. Now, occasionally when I see individuals who are delivering speeches on the national scene, and I don't even listen keenly to those. I wait for them at funerals in their rural settings, when they now descend into their factory setting and listen to what they say. I listened to one of them who was speaking in Nyanza, and is from the Kalenjin extraction. And this is a senior government official saying, we are Nilots, and this is our time to organize against other communities. You are senior government official, you are talking about your Nilotness. You are not talking about the Republic of Kenya. How can it be repaired? We must, as a country, take a solemn vow. Look even at the professions. If you go to lawyers, we are now organizing ourselves around ethnicity. Kisis have their own association, Luos have their own, Kikuyus have their own, Kambas have their own. What is the role of the Law Society of Kenya? Why do we descend into these ethnic outfits? But we do. And we don't apologize. And as long as we follow that path, the country will ultimately pay. And it can pay very dearly. If you doubt me, ask the Somalis. What the equivalent of tribe in Somalia is the clan. And that is why it has not been possible to put Somalia together, because we worship at the altar of the gods of ethnicity. The president, if he chose to, can move us in the right direction. Even by the manner in which you appoint individuals. If you look at major organizations and look at the appointments in this country at the national level, and you look at the appointments in the counties of a young mentee who is a doctor of the Luo extraction, was head of the medical sector in Sigei. He was told by the then administration in Sigei, we cannot have a man from Migori. He's of the Luo extraction now. The division is because he's from Migori, not Sigei. A doctor. But yet, when you and me are sick and we want to be treated, we don't care about the tribe. We just want a good doctor. When we are flying, we are not asking which tribe, which tribe is the pilot. We just want a good pilot. I think it is Deng Xiaoping once said that when you want the rat caught, you simply want a cat that can catch the rat. You don't care whether it's black or brown. But here we ask, is the cat our cat? As long as we ask those irrelevant questions, our country will continue to suffer, and it is suffering as we speak.
Professor PLO Lumumba is our guest this morning. He writes to presidents, and he has written a second letter to President William Ruto. One he wrote last year, another one he's written this year on the 25th of September, and he has a stamped copy received. So the letter has gone to the right office. Whether it has reached the right man, we are yet to find out, right? At least it has gone to the right office.
Indeed.
Whether it has landed on the right desk, it's another conversation. I want to quote a bit of what you've quoted here. What you say is there's some lamentation going round on social media and other places titled, "Cry My Beloved Country." The pain of being a Kenyan is slowly becoming unbearable. A country where pensioners' money is stolen and your government is quiet. A country where workers' wages are deducted and yet not remitted to SACCOs and banks, but we are quiet. A country where for 3 weeks, learners in secondary and university institutions have been in school and not learning, and everyone is quiet. A country where every day, people, including our children, are abducted only for bodies to be found in rivers and dams, but people are quiet. A country where the opposition joins the government not to check it or help the people, but to join in the feeding frenzy. But still the people are quiet. A country where road carnage is wiping our lives at will and people are quiet. A country where non-existent projects are initiated and paid for, but everyone is quiet. A country where the national airport has been sold to foreigners and still everyone is quiet. And it goes on, and this is "Cry My Beloved Country." And you sent that to the president.
Indeed.
This is what is going round. And then you have some proposals to him.
What needs to happen? And I know that you talk about getting angry enough. And we know that the citizen has a critical role to play as concerns what happens in their country. It's a duty that you're called upon to do. So now with 50 plus million Kenyans who are in a position whereby things are not just going right, and we know that the tone must be set from the top, but there's something that Kenyans need to do. What's that?
Kenyans need to demonstrate and dramatize their anger in a manner that is convertible into real action. If you look at specific areas, take for example in the area of education, we have this thing called CBC. Nothing wrong with it philosophically. But if you look at the implementation, it is wrong. We don't have the funds. What should parents do? My view is that through Parents Association across the country, we should use the avenues that are available to us. One of them is to use the court process. They will ignore the court processes, but if they ignore it, you go to the next step. Then you take action. And that action can even include withdrawing your children from school. These are things that have been tried and tested. In other words, we've got to expect some pain if we want change, so that we don't just speak for one day and then we forget about it. Remember now in the education sector, Your typical politician are taking their children to the British and American system. So the education system is for the common person. That is why they don't care about it. And if we acted consistently in that manner, we will send a clear message, even at the university level. Why should you be banding in students into band 1, band B, band whatever it is? All students ought to be treated in a manner that they are in other parts of the world, and that is give loans to those who deserve it, give bursaries to those who deserve it, and this should be done in a manner that is implementable. And if you go to the health sector, one of the questions is, why are we migrating into the new system? Why must we always be changing things? How does a country build a system? If you go to the Scandinavian countries, which we can learn from in the health sector, you have a sector that is improved every other time. If there was a problem with the NHIF, explain to us how it is being implemented. This opaque approach of doing things, which ends up into a scandal, is something that does annoy. And once again, people should just say, we are not going to pay into that system. And people can create alternative systems. There have been countries where there are tax boycotts. And if that is done, I remember at one time, the Langata Karen Association went to court and said, we are not going to pay our rates to the Nairobi City Council at that time. And they were granted orders, and they used that money to improve their environment. I think that that should happen. If you go into the area of taxation, look at the usurious tax. Kenya is one of the countries where banks make tons of millions of money. If you are a business person, woe betide you if you go into the bank and take a loan. So there are things that people can do. I know there are quite a number of organizations which talk about these things. I know there are public-spirited individuals who do these things, but we are too much spectators. We expect some people to be the warriors in the arena while we watch and spectate. We must be engaged. That is what happens, civic engagement, and is something that we have seen consistently in different countries, and it can make governments change their stances.
The countries that we see which have progressed to the level of which you give examples of, at whatever level that you want to see, there was revolution that took place. Whether there was a revolution of ideas or there was a revolution of actual brick and mortar behavior, action that took place. If you actually want to see change, if you want to see that governance and leadership is carried out in a proper way, that development happens void of things like corruption, at least to a certain level, does revolution need to take place?
You know, we are headed in that direction. Let's not beat about the bush. If we are not careful and be wary of the fury of a patient population, when you least expect it, something can ignite the population in a manner that was never expected. I'm one who believes that we should exhaust all systems, all methods of having peaceful change. But if peaceful change is impossible, let me tell you, revolution is the language of the unheard, and it can happen. Let us not cheat ourselves that this country is immune. I was intimately involved in the attempt at making peace in the year 2007, 2008. But for the intervention of the international community, this country was descending into civil war. And once again, and I traveled this country, I traveled in this informal settlements in this city, the anger is palpable. You take a taxi, you take a boda, and they want to have a conversation
Everybody
with
wants
you.
to talk about
And they are telling you, we are angry, what can we do?
Yeah.
And somehow, if you look at our parliament, which is neutered, it speaks not about any of these things. They are going to spend millions of shillings now in the process of impeachment of the deputy president, going around the country to ask us whether the deputy president is guilty or not guilty. Who among them is without sin? The sins that they are accusing the deputy president of, each one of them, almost without exception. I would have wanted my parliament to discuss the economic situation. I would have wanted to hear my parliamentarians talking about the lack of salaries or proper remuneration for different cadres of the society. I do not hear that. Instead, they are defending, they are fighting about the Constituency Development Fund, which I don't think they should manage. That is not their duty. And when you walk around Nairobi or any part of the country, you see the poster of a member of parliament constructed courtesy of this parliament. That is our tax money. Should not bear the image of an individual. It is sad, my sister. It is sad, Eric, that we are in this space. But I can guarantee you, if it is not in our lifetime, if this continues, this country is going to pay. And that could be the revolution that will change things. That if we are not careful, it could become worse before it becomes better. And I said in my last letter, the first letter in 2023 to Mr. Odinga and the president, then I told them, let us paddle this water while it is knee deep. Because when it gets to our necks, we will sink, all of us. All of us. Mtego wa panya huingia waliomo na wasiokuwemo.
Do you think they get it? Because the same way you go around the country, it's the same way these political leaders, especially the top political leaders, if you talk about William Ruto, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, they have traversed this country. They have engaged with people, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different. They have listened and talked to people. Is it possible that they don't get the message?
Sometimes I think they don't get it, and if they get it, they don't care. But remember, your typical Kenyan politician prepares the ground before they go there. And preparation of the ground means that you send advance parties with small denominations of Kenyan currency, and you ensure that the ground is softened in that way and properly choreographed. And you have your goons who shut down any individual who holds a contrary view. And because of that, quite a number of them are shielded from the reality. But yet, there is so much noise being made in the Kenyan environment that they must know that people are angry.
They must be hearing something.
If they ever doubted it, the dramatization of this anger by the young people in the month of July must and should have sent a chilling message. And for the first time, you could see even the head of state did not leave the country. The head of state sent the finance bill. The parliamentarians were scared. The cabinet ministers were no longer flying their flags. They got it. But somehow, memories are short and selective. That is why we must keep on reminding them. But as I said a little earlier, when a country is hurtling towards its destruction, even when God reasons with the leaders, they think God mad. I fear that we may be in such a state. We fear there are politicians in this country who think they are larger than life, almost as large as death. And that is part of our problem. They are insensitive. Even when this truth sits on their laps, telling them, behold, I am the truth, they refuse to listen. And if they do listen, they refuse to hearken.
You know, Prof, if the president called you for a meeting and said, I've received your letter, please come. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's talk about the issues that you raise.
Tell me what to
I'm
do.
sure he'd explain to you and tell you a couple of things. For example, he'd tell you on the issue of CBC and education, there's been, poor implementation of CBC, and I come in halfway through the beginning of implementation. I form a task force and I tell them, go listen to the people, engage with the people, and come and tell me the best way from your own professional advice for us to roll this thing out. And that is what you see. The role of CBC, the new university funding model. This is addressing all the challenges that we have from primary to post-secondary education. If he told you about universal health coverage, it's a program that has been there in government departments for very many years. Now we are saying, let's roll it out. It needed laws. Experts came and said, let's have laws. Those laws were taken to parliament. They were discussed. They were passed. Now we are implementing it. There's a challenge in implementation. I am forming a team to look at how to implement it. PLO, I'm working with the best interests of this country at heart, with very many moving parts.
I would tell particularly this president, I would say, but Mr. President, you've been in government since 1997, so this is not new to you. I would tell him, Your Excellency, you served as the deputy president of this country for the last 10 years. All these issues have been raised over the years, and I am a citizen who knows. I know, for example, that the CBC ought to have been piloted. Did you go through the pilot phase? Were the individuals who are involved the real individuals who have expertise in the area? And I would say revisit it and make sure that you have a pilot phase, because we cannot experiment with education. I would remind my president that, number one, remember that under the East African Community Treaty, we said that we would harmonize our education across the East African community. We are now going solo. In other words, we are getting it wrong, Mr. President, on the education. Get real experts who are there. And I would remind the president, look at the commission that we have had. Whether it's the Bisha Commission, whether it's the Ominde Commission, the Gashadi Commission, the Koech Commission, the Munavu Task Force, all these task forces have brought in things and made recommendations which, in my view, I can tell you are not being followed. That is on education. On health, I would tell him that let us not change the names of things. We had Kenya Farmers Association, then we changed it to Kenya Grain Growers Association. A rose by any other name is a rose. What we need to do is to look at the systems, look at the NHIF. Part of the problem with NHIF is simply theft, robbery on an industrial scale. Changing the system and digitizing without changing the DNA and the character and the culture of the people who run those institutions who are not experts is not going to help. Once again, therefore, pilot the system. And there is no shortage of individuals from the private sector who can help you in this regard. In the area of agriculture, for example, we must ask ourselves, what kind of seeds are we selling to our people? We know that Bayer and Monsanto and all these foundations, including the Bill Gates, the agenda is to eliminate and to control our food ecosystem. Let us go to the experts. In other words, we have all these. And I would tell His Excellency, look at the ADC farms that were taken. Look at the Kenya Agricultural Finance Corporation. All these things exist, and we were doing very well until we politicize. And I would tell the president, by politicization, I mean appointing individuals who have no knowledge nor expertise in these areas, while they are individuals who can serve. And I would tell him, Your Excellency, if you did the right thing, if you put the right individuals in the right place and gave them the opportunity to serve without undue interference, with clear goals that you have set for them, then we would be on the proper trajectory. I would then lastly tell the president, Your Excellency, remember that we have promised ourselves under Vision 2030 that we are going to do things in a particular way. We have also promised ourselves under the East African Community Treaty that we are going to do things in a particular way. We have promised ourselves under Africa Agenda 2063 and Sustainable Development Goals that we are going to do things in a particular way. I can tell you, Mr. President, I read and engage with this document. We have engaged the reverse gear, and we are moving with jet-like speed in the wrong direction. Mr. President, task forces is the avenue that is followed by individuals who do not want anything implemented. If you don't want it done, appoint a task force. That is what I would tell His Excellency.
You make good points. And it push back and say, I am working the best way I can. I have sought, when you tell me to engage with professionals, the people I've engaged with are professionals. The people who've come and said, let's move into CBC are professionals. They're professors, educationists. The people that I appointed in that task force led by Professor Munavu are professionals in education. The people who are engaging in the rollout of universal health coverage are professionals in education. They are actually players even in the sector. Some of them are heavily invested in this, so they want it to succeed.
This is what I would tell the president, that I hear, and I can say this on authority from some of the individuals, that when some of these professionals come to you, Your Excellency, they tell you what they think you want to hear rather than what you need to hear. Some of us who have no offices to lose are telling you what you need to hear. And I think that that is why I'm saying that there is this need to give people the opportunity to enjoy autonomy in terms of exercise of the authority that is granted unto them. And we hear it from the grapevine. I serve in a number of boards, and the people say, no, when we go to some of these meetings, we just sit like primary school children and we are told what to do. And then we do it because we want to protect our jobs. But the right thing is that you allow people to deliver. And it has been done. Look at the administration of President Kibaki. Of course, he ran the country under a different dispensation. The 2010 constitution was not in full flare. But you saw that there was the freedom given to cabinet ministers and senior public officials to engage. And they did certain good things. But here, we are much more impressed with drama. Cabinet ministers tweeting, I've now arrived in the office. I'm now in a meeting. I'm launching. Recently in my rural village, they launched a solar system which started operating last year. It was being launched for the third time. This is drama. And this kind of drama is going to take people nowhere. I know a place where they claimed they had done a borehole. What they had done was to bring a water bowser. And then the individual who was launching was opening. After that, nothing. In the digital space where you say we are digitized, I attended one, and a few minutes after it had been launched, it was not working. You know, this kind of drama and statistics, we have done this, and there is no depth, is what is making the people angry. I can give you a number of public offices today, even the police. Only yesterday in my rural home, there was a theft, and my people reported it to the police post out there. And you know, they said, we will not investigate until you give us money. I had to call and said, are you now telling me that a crime cannot be investigated until a citizen pays money? Will you give me a receipt? Says, tell me how much money. I'm going to send it and I want a receipt. How many are finding themselves in that space? And I remember this, Eric, at one time. If despite your best intentions and your best efforts, you are not delivering, then you allow others to deliver.
It's not working.
It's not working.
Kubali clear to yourself as well.
Kubali aishe.
Yeah. So that the country knows imenishinda hivi.
It's hard to admit.
Yeah.
Prof, thank you very much for joining us today and for always having time to have this conversation with us as a people. It's now time for you to leave. You can now tweet.
I am now leaving the studio.
I'm now leaving the studio. Thank you very much. I wish you the very best.
Thank you. Keep it here for more conversations. In the next hour, after this engaging conversation with... Don't go, Prof. We didn't say that. We didn't mean it. Kone ujui jokes.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.